Welcome to Blue White Tailgate, brought to you by our good friends at Rich Coast Coffee. Steve Jones, Todd Sadowski. After a weekend, a bye week in which we had chip and dip night over at Phil Grosz's place. Phil partied a little bit too much. He's not with us this week, but we'll hope to get the big guy back next week. Let's get to it. Great time because you love the rivalry games, and we know Michigan is the primary rival for Ohio State, but this has developed into a great secondary rivalry for them and for Penn State.
Yeah, no doubt. And besides chip and dip night, I just want to say I took the bye week to do some self-scouting. Like the team and a little bit of rest. The self-scouting, there's a lot of room for improvement. But as far as the rivalry goes with Ohio State, you're right. And it's a true rivalry because one team wins one year, one team wins the next. That's really when you know you got yourself a good rivalry. There's a little bit of that ebb and flow. And right now, Ohio State leads the series 15-13. But 5 out of the last 6 games, the road team has won, including 2 of the last 3 for Penn State at the Horseshoe.
This is why it's a rivalry, guys, because in the last 10 years, no team has beaten Ohio State more than Penn State, and no team has beaten Penn State more than Ohio State. That's why it's a rivalry as you look at the last 10 years. Time now for Sounding Off, brought to you by our good friends of the Family Clothesline, and we hear from John Urschel.
Definitely, I'd see it as a big rivalry, but to be honest, every single game this year is big for us. With no bowl game, no postseason, anything, every single game is like a bowl game. It's like, honestly, you could say it's like we have 12 one-game seasons even.
There's no question about that. That's the mindset they've really taken since the day the sanctions came out, and that's the approach that they've taken. Now let's look at the series between the two because it's played out. Todd's exactly right. And by the way, we don't play the vacated game stuff. I mean, Ohio State listed 14-13. They vacated the 2010 game. Okay, I'm not into mirages. So it's 15-13, and I mean, you're right, Todd. What's happened the last 6 years, the road team has done well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Urschel mentioned the 12 one-game seasons. This is really important to the Nittany Lions. This is a game that they want. It's equally as important to Ohio State. There's not much left on their schedule after Penn State. Of course, you got Michigan at the end of the season, but if they get this game, they're going to get the next couple. They're going to go into that Michigan game undefeated. This is an undefeated team, and they know Penn State is their biggest challenge up until the end of the year.
In the BCS, let's be honest about it, Ohio State doesn't have an impact game. I mean, that's the problem. That's why Penn State on Saturday night is important. Okay, time now for Upon Further Review, brought to you by our good friends at the Penn State Bookstore. Our friend Fran Fisher looks back at the Ohio State series.
I got to say the Nittany Lions have not been overwhelming the Ohio State Buckeyes since joining the Big Ten. But who can forget that 63-14 stomping the Lions handed Ohio State in that memorable 1994 season? Older fans, and I qualify by the way, remember the Rip Engle-Woody Hayes confrontations in the 60s with back-to-back wins for Rip in 1963 and 1964, both at the Horseshoe in Columbus. Pete Lisk, the Paterno-coached quarterback in 1963, led the Nittany Lions to a 10-7 win, a real stunner. But not compared to the 27-0 whipping Penn State handed the heavily favored and number 2 Buckeyes the next year. The slick quarterbacking of Gary Weidman, the power running of Tom Urbanek, and the unrelenting Jim Ressler-led defense handled the situation pretty well. Joe Paterno got a piece of Woody Hayes in 1978 in beating the Buckeyes 19-0 as Pete Harris made 2 of the 5 interceptions thrown by Ohio State freshman quarterback Art Schlichter. Memories. Let's make Saturday's game a pleasant one for future Penn State old guys. This is Fran Fisher for Upon Further Review.
1978, that helped propel Penn State to the national championship game that year. All right, every season is a journey. Well, so far we're halfway through that journey, and John Strode takes us on a trip through the first 6 games.
The popularity of sports seems to know no bounds. Fans call it the ultimate reality show with its amazing twists and turns. And judging by Penn State's last 2 games, they may be the ultimate proof of that theory. Penn State enters its road game at Indiana on October 5th with a 16-0 record against the Hoosiers and leaves Bloomington with a shocking 44-24 thumping. The Nittany Lions rushed for only 70 yards and botched 2 field goal attempts. And in his Tuesday press conference, Bill O'Brien refuses to look back at the loss.
I'm talking about Michigan. We've moved on from Indiana. We're focused on Michigan. Our team's focused on Michigan. I've moved on to Michigan. Indiana's over. It's in the rearview mirror.
Fast forward to Michigan, the Nittany Lions post one of the greatest wins in Beaver Stadium history. Penn State rallies from 10 points down in the 4th quarter to upset the 18th-ranked Wolverines in 4 overtimes. behind a playmaking defense and a determined running game. When asked about his team's dramatic turnaround, O'Brien responds,
when you're coaching, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old guys, like, nothing should amaze you. There's going to be twists and turns. There's, these guys, look, again, I've said it a million times, these are tough kids.
Each season is its own journey with dramatic twists and turns, and this was a turn Penn State needed to make.
180 from last week. Last week we were real down after the game, but we put that behind us real quick, and then this week, as soon as we got the victory, it was like some weight's been lifted off our shoulders, but it's been great.
Despite the shocking twist of fate at Indiana, tight end Jesse James has little doubt the Lions would right the ship against Michigan and put their season back on course.
We wanted to play our best football this week, and we were mad. We were pissed off when we came in this week, and worked hard, had a good week of practice, and it showed well on the field today.
Penn State seems to have gotten back on course in just a nick of time as they face the number 4 ranked Buckeyes in Columbus, where Penn State's won 2 of the last 3 meetings. But keep in mind, Penn State hasn't beaten a top 5 ranked team since 1999. For the Blue White Tailgate Show, I'm John Stroh.
Todd and I, by the way, want to know after that package where we can get that jacket. All right, coming up, we will take a look at the Nittany Lion offense as they square up against the Ohio State defense as we continue on the Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee after this. Bye week number 2 for Penn State, but the first one led to the Indiana game. Bill O'Brien well aware of that.
I think this bye week was used a little bit differently than the first one, in the fact that the big goal of this bye week was to get our guys healthy. So we probably rested our first and second team guys a little bit more in this bye week and did a little bit more meeting time, a little bit more cell scout, things like that to try to fix some of the things that we need to get corrected in order.
And that was important for them along the way to do that. Now, let's look at the matchup. We're going to talk about the offense here in a moment. The Ohio State defense against the Penn State offense. Todd, the numbers are there right away. It's the passing numbers, though, that are interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see they allow under 20 points a game. So they are getting some yardage up against them on the passing, 240 a game. Penn State certainly one of the top passing attacks in the Big Ten. But it's that bend, don't break mentality. And Ohio State has an excellent rush defense. So for Penn State, what do you do to get yourself in good third down situations? If you run the ball first down, now you're 2nd and 8. You've got to get a little bit more than 3 yards a pop when you're rushing the ball against these guys and get yourself in good down and distance situations for Christian Hackenberg.
Also, Bill O'Brien talks about complementary football all the time. Ohio State has done that brilliantly so far. That defense usually runs on the field with a lot of green behind it because only 3 times in 7 games as a team started on the plus side of the 50 against the Ohio State defense. Todd, that's important.
Absolutely. And you're talking about possessions where you don't score points, but you don't put your defense in a bad situation. To think you're going to go out there and score every time against Ohio State's defense, it's just not going to happen. But if you can move the chains a couple of times, get a pretty decent punt, not turn the ball over, those are things you got to do. You got to win the field position battle or at least play it even against Ohio State.
The Iowa game with Ohio State, each team only had the ball 8 times, only 8 possessions the entire game. Iowa did a great job with their 3 tight ends.
No doubt. They came out, and Coach Meyer was disappointed with the fact that Iowa had a bye week leading into that game, and so does Penn State. So he was kind of boo-hooing the fact that they have an extra week to prepare for them. But you're absolutely right. Ohio State has been an awesome second half team. They ran 31 plays in the third quarter alone. They only had 3 possessions in the first half, and they were just something else after halftime. So they're making a lot of adjustments. But Iowa came out in that 3 tight end set, and it really baffled the defense, and they were able to do a good job scoring.
Todd, what Urban failed to mention was that Ohio State also had a bye week heading into the Iowa game. Okay, that's fine. We can twist it any way we wish out there. I'm sorry, Urban. I didn't mean to look at your schedule. All right, and play games with the facts. All right, let's get to tempo. It's going to be very important in this one. Bill O'Brien knows his team can go at various speeds, so which one do you pick?
Once you get a feel for it, then it's more about, to me, it's the players have confidence in it. They'll even say to you, they'll say, hey, coach, can we speed it up again? And then as a coach, you're going, maybe we need to slow this down, but these kids have a lot, and there's a lot to be said for a kid that has confidence in what you're doing, and they want to speed it up. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and again, it's a week to week, it's a different challenge, and obviously it's a big challenge for us this week versus Ohio State.
And, of course, the key to that engine, of course, is the quarterback, Christian Hackenberg.
Yeah, no doubt. And it just gives the opponent food for thought. When you can go at 3 different speeds, they're not sure what you're going to do. So I think what will happen is they'll see what Christian Hackenberg is comfortable with. He is going into a hostile environment. It's only a second road test. Didn't win the first one at Indiana. So I think they're really going to go out and see what tempo he's comfortable with. Obviously, you see what the Buckeyes are reacting to, but you really got to gauge it with your quarterback. What is he having success with, and what does he feel he can do?
It's also going to be a night game, an 8 o'clock start, and what should be a finely tuned crowd at Ohio State, which means they have to deal with the crowd noise. John Urschel on that.
It's a hostile environment. A lot of fans. It's honestly a lot like Beaver Stadium for our opposing teams. So might be a little loud when we're on offense.
Yeah, might be. That's fine. But you know what? That's fine. That's what makes the game great.
Yeah, and that's what, we talked about the rivalry at the top of the show, and that's what makes this rivalry even more special. For the 5th time since 2005, it is a primetime game. For the Big Ten, this is one of the marquee matchups. They want it in prime time, and that's what we're going to see again. So this is not just happening occasionally. This is the trend. It's going to continue for these two teams.
Now that's the next part. Usually we pick our player of the week here, and what we're going to do is give you a player to look for that we think's the key guy going into the game, and we both agree it's Christian Hackenberg.
Yeah, no doubt Hackenberg is the guy that's going to set the tempo. He's going to be comfortable. He's going to have to really, really control that football and take care of it in order for Penn State to have some success. He's throwing the ball great. They know that. He's got weapons. They're going to be able to move the ball. But against Indiana, they kept shooting themselves in the foot, and those drives were stalling. So we're going to see what happens here against Ohio State.
Now let's get to the guys he has to throw. That's the natural transition here. That's Robinson, of course, and then Brandon Felder, who stepped up. Let's get to the Robinson-Roby thing. Roby said, I want Aberderis. You got him to the tune of 207 yards, okay? Now he's got Allen Robinson.
Yeah, well, Bradley Roby was ejected from last week's game for targeting, kind of a controversial rule, and certainly, that he wasn't real happy with that decision to be thrown out of the game. But it was interesting to see Allen Robinson go up against Blake Countess. He had a little feel for a really good defensive back, and he was quiet for the first half. But in the big moments, Allen Robinson stepped up and shined. So we'll see if Roby can maybe take him out of his game the first half and see how Robinson maybe adjusts throughout the whole game for him.
And by the way, I completely agree with Urban Meyer about, look, using the crown of the helmet, absolute. That hit that he made, that's a football play, and I think Urban's absolutely right about that. All right, now the other part is Brandon Felder getting into the mix. He did against Michigan. It made a huge difference.
No doubt about it. That was going into that game. One of the keys was let's find a second receiver to go to, especially in the red zone or inside the 20, 25. He scored twice. It was really, really important to see Felder step up and give Ohio State somebody else that they need to concentrate on, and give Hackenberg somebody that he can rely on and be comfortable with.
All right, our drive of the first half of the season. Gee, I wonder which one we picked. Brought to you by Stocker Chevrolet, located across the Nittany Mall and the Benner Pike. Also have a brand new showroom on Drivables. Check that out. It's Stocker Chevrolet. Drive of the first half of the season. Oh, Michigan. 50 seconds left. 18-year-old quarterback. What the heck? Back to pass, and right away, let's go to the big guy. That's Allen Robinson, who keeps that foot in bounds in an absolutely remarkable catch, keeping that left foot in, control of the football. Fabulous play by Robinson. Now he goes back up top to the guy we just talked about. That's Brandon Felder. In between a couple of defenders, makes the catch to the Michigan 37-yard line. And now the Nittany Lions in 2 plays are in position. They spike the ball to kill the clock. Back up top, you go to your All-American. Great throw by Hackenberg, and even better catch by Robinson. Everything's in bounds. Forget 1 foot, everything's in bounds. They're to the half-yard line on a catch for the ages in the history of Penn State football right there. Fabulous, going up over the top and reeling that in to the half-yard line. That sets up Christian Hackenberg for the quarterback sneak. And in 23 seconds, the Nittany Lions negotiate 80 yards, get the extra point. They have to console that Michigan fan. I wonder how much they had to console him on the ride home to Ann Arbor as well. Great, great football game between the two. We've talked offense versus defense. Now, how do the Nittany Lions defend Braxton Miller? We'll talk about that as we continue right after this. Well, welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee. And now it's time to get ready for Ohio State for this defense. And it brings with it a multitude of challenges, Todd.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. And I think the first challenge to really consider when you talk about Ohio State is let's start with the head coach, Urban Meyer. I mean, he's been successful everywhere he's went. They have not lost since he's gotten there. A 19-game winning streak for the Buckeyes. His overall record is not 23-23, it's 123-23. I mean, the guy's 100 games over 500. A phenomenal coaching record everywhere he's went, from Bowling Green to Utah to Florida, of course, and now Ohio State. So it starts with the head coach and the challenges he presents, and he brings with it always a solid offense.
All right, let's take a look at the Ohio State offense against the Penn State defense numerically. Here's the tail of the tape on the two of them. And you see that they rack up yards and they rack up points, and the balance, Todd, is very impressive.
No doubt about it. The number that pops off the screen to me, Steve, is that yards rushing. 279 yards a game, and a lot of that comes in the second half when they just give it to the 240-pound battering ram, Carlos Hyde, and they just wear you down.
I work with a guy whose nickname is Hammer. Well, on the football field, Carlos Hyde is the hammer the way he runs the ball. But the guy that's the trigger man that you're taking a closer look at is Braxton Miller.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's a dual-threat quarterback, and the scary thing is that this guy continues to get better every single year, and we see that in his progression from the moment he signed on and said, I'm going to Columbus. The problems start for Big Ten opponents in June of 2010 when Braxton Miller puts on the Buckeyes lid and commits to Ohio State. No surprise the Ohio kid picks Columbus as his college home. His dual threat ability continues to catch defenders off guard.
It's a very difficult challenge playing a guy like Braxton Miller. You know, in my opinion, one of the top 5 players in the country.
It's an opinion shared by many. Miller finishes 5th in the Heisman Trophy voting as a sophomore. He throws for over 2,000 yards and rushes for over 1,000 and is even more efficient this year. Against Iowa, Miller completes 22 of 27 with 2 touchdown passes and rushes for over 100 yards. He converts 10 of 14 third downs and keeps the Buckeyes punter on the sidelines the entire game.
We dropped it back on first down more than we probably have in one game, more than we have in probably a year and a half. So that's showing that we have much more confidence in our receivers than we ever have, and certainly our quarterback, I thought Braxton played really well.
Last year was his first year in the system. Now I think he's got great grasp of this system. He's throwing the ball well. I thought they played real well offensively against Iowa. If he gets outside the pocket, you know, he's a dangerous guy.
Miller has missed time due to injuries. Even though his backup Kenny Guyton lights it up every time he plays, there's no doubt Miller is the guy. You don't stop the reigning Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. You just hope to minimize the damage his legs and rocket arm can do to a defense.
That's the difficulty with a lot of these teams that you face with these quarterbacks that are, you know, dual threat guys. You know, it's a dangerous thing when they get outside the pocket. They're excellent quarterbacks in the pocket, and they're good outside the pocket. So, you know, we'll just do the best we can.
He has rushed for over 100 yards against Penn State as a freshman, as a sophomore, and he is a nightmare to chase around for the guys up front.
He is, and here's the other part, too. The Ohio State offense has only turned the ball over 8 times in 7 games, so they take good care of the ball. He's thrown only 2 interceptions so far this year. Done a nice job. All right, so let's get to up front, because up front, I think that's where you need to really start your game plan against this team.
Well, they're one of the best teams in the nation at third down conversions, and Braxton Miller is a big part of that. So how do you get this team in bad situations? You gotta stop the rush on first and second down and make it go 3rd and 5 and more than that. And you gotta contain your edges when you're facing this guy. It's hard to do that, but you really got to rush and form that pocket and keep him in there and make him throw the ball.
Against the old option guys, you didn't worry too much about the pass, but as Urban Meyer talked about, they're throwing the ball a lot more on first down now. What about defending the read option, Bill O'Brien?
It always comes down to assignment football. You know, who has the dive, who has the quarterback, who has the pitch if there's a pitch involved. How do you want to play it? Do you want to play it with post safety coverage or split safety coverage or man-to-man coverage? And I think what makes it really, really tough are the guys that are running it.
And there's no question. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Your linebackers have to be really good in assignment football because they have to read right away whether it's Hyde, him keeping it, Wilson getting it, or he wants to throw the football.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we're going to gush about Ohio State's offense, mainly because they've got the skills players and they have the talent to get it done. This is the ultimate challenge for Penn State's defense, and certainly the linebackers, Michael Hall, Naeem Wortman, those guys have got to read the play and react right away. They're hoping that they can contain the edge of the defensive ends, keep your assignment, and then the linebackers can fill those holes without giving up too much yardage and make the initial hit and bring them down.
Yeah, the guy that seems to be emerging, by the way, for Penn State in defense, we think, is Jordan Lucas, who had the interception against Michigan, 28 tackles so far this year. Bill O'Brien's seeing it.
Jordan Lucas is one of the better football players on our team. He's just a great competitive kid. Tough, plays hurt, very good in man coverage. Really good in zone coverage of understanding routes, got great ball skills. I think he could also play safety. Right now we play him at corner.
And he's going to be important in a game like this, because the corners are put out in that island in a game like this. So Lucas, Amos, guys like that, they're going to have to, that assignment football that Bill talks about is going to be important.
Yeah, and that interesting comment he just made, the last thing he said about he could even play some safety. So I wonder if they're thinking about using him in more of a versatile role. You talk about Braxton Miller. Do you send a spy out for him? The only way that you can watch that guy is to get your best athlete on him. Jordan Lucas is certainly one of those candidates. So whether or not he's playing on an island in one-on-one man defense, they're going to rely on him to get the job done. Maybe we see him float a little bit and see what they can do, something interesting to give Ohio State a different look.
We talked about Christian Hackenberg being our player to watch on offense. Player to watch on defense, Mike Hull, put in that spot because he has to handle Hyde inside, but also has to handle Miller, whether Miller decides to keep it or whether Miller decides to put it up, and then Hull drops into his zone.
Yeah, that bye week, they used it for rest. I hope they are rested and ready to go because Mike Hall's going to do a lot of running side to side.
He will indeed. All right, coming up, we'll take a look at the recruiting scene. Michigan game reaped some recruiting fruit for Penn State. It's more as we continue on the Blue White Tailgate, presented by Rich Coast Coffee, right after this.
We are back on the Blue White Tailgate for the recruiting segment, sponsored by Central Pennsylvania Dock and Door. And wow, that Michigan game, it is paying big dividends right away. They go head-to-head with Ohio State on the field this weekend. They already beat them off the field. Joining us, Andrew Callista. Tell us about the victory for the Nittany Lions in the recruiting trail.
Oh, well, Mike Gesicki, the tight end out of New Jersey, is one of the top tight ends in the nation. 6'6", 230. He's the Jesse James type that could go down the field. You could split him out wide. He's going to pay big dividends for Bill O'Brien future in the offense. Yeah, no doubt. And he had to tell Urban Meyer, sorry, coach, but I'm actually heading to Penn State to play for Bill O'Brien. Another decommit from another school that's coming to the Big Ten is now heading to Happy Valley as well. Yeah, Jonathan Thomas. He's out of Massachusetts. He's a 5'11", 210-pound running back, was committed to the Terps. He was waiting on an offer from Penn State. Obviously, with the NCAA opening up more scholarships, that gave them a chance to give him an offer. He jumped at it. Anybody else coming in? You guys, we're talking about a lot of different names. We've got some guys that are on the fence with their decisions. Jason Cabinda, well, he just committed Tuesday morning to the Lions. He had an offer from Syracuse, was actually committed to them. Syracuse is my alma mater, that 56-0 shellacking that they took at Georgia Tech. Yeah, you probably don't want to go up to the Carrier Dome and play too many times over a 4-year period. Well, we were talking off camera about, with Thomas's commitment, he decommitted from Maryland. They lost 63-0 to Florida State. And then you got another decommit that's falling in the way of Penn State. So maybe it does matter what you do on television, certainly in prime time with 100,000 people in the stands. Yeah, you don't want to be embarrassed in front of, not only your hometown fans, but you don't want to be embarrassed in front of TVs and then you got it on TV and then you got to go home and face your friends and be like, hey, man, you just got smacked. A lot more room on the roster. What positions are they targeting? What are we seeing some play in coming up? I think the Lions are going to look more towards the lines. You got the offensive tackle, Alex Buxer out of Mount Lebanon. That's a Penn State-Ohio State battle. That would be huge if Penn State could get him in this class. And then you got Derek Nandi and Thomas Hawley. Hawley's going to be a Penn State-Ohio State battle. And Nandi, he's one of the top D tackles in the country. Penn State wants to beef up there. There's not a lot of depth right there for Larry Johnson Sr. Well, speaking of depth, let's take a look at our injury report, the Health South update.
we've got pretty much everybody healthy. We know about the guys that are out for the season, Wilkerson, Lehman. Kaiser is going to play with the cast. Mike Hall looks healthy. Ben Klein, he's dealing with that shoulder issue. That is just going to be an issue all year long. But they look pretty good right now. They look pretty healthy heading into the Ohio State game.
Yeah, they got some bumps and bruises. Ben Klein's probably the most serious injured one with that shoulder problem. But the staff has done a great job. Tim Bream, Fitzgerald, they're keeping the guys healthy. They're getting them hydrated. The whole diet system they got going really paying dividends this late in the season.
And so we're going to be keeping a close watch on Ohio State. They're battling them on the field this weekend, but they are really, really battling them off the field as well.
A good showing for the Lions this week could propel Bill O'Brien in some of these upcoming recruiting battles. You know, you go out to the shoe, have a good showing. The recruits know that Penn State's a little bit undermanned right now, and you're playing a top 4 team. Just be a little bit competitive. You know, maybe pull off the W could be huge in the next few years.
Absolutely. He's got some room on the team for some fresh recruits, and they are starting to sign up and head to Penn State. Andrew, thanks a lot for your help. We'll be right back on the Blue-White Tailgate with our guest interview, and then we'll wrap up, take a look at the first BCS standings later in the show.
Well, Ohio State is 7-0. They're 4th in the BCS. The problem they have is they don't have a Clemson matchup like Florida State on their list of games down the road. They don't have an impact game coming up, except Penn State and Michigan are those 2 games, but they may not be enough to have them hurdle Oregon or Florida State.
Well, and that's where this game comes in with style points for them. I mean, they haven't beaten a Big Ten opponent by more than 10 points yet. They've struggled a little bit. They've been in some close contests. For Ohio State, obviously you want to win the game. You got to defend your home turf. If they can get style points in the process, they may have to do that against some of these teams down the road. But first things first, you got to handle Penn State and handle your business at home.
And haven't lost a game since Urban Meyer came on board. He's done a great job like he has at other stops.
He has been, and 19-0, what can you say about that? He's using other people's players, but he's developing schemes and he's getting them to believe right away in his system. And I know you have an interesting take on Urban Meyer and some of the things he does well, that he personally takes care of one unit for the team.
He does. He takes care of special teams. That's his baby. And you can see it. I talked earlier about the fact that only 3 possessions the entire season have started on the plus side of the 50. That's that complementary football. And Urban Meyer takes personal charge of special teams. You watch on kickoffs, for example. They only play 2/3 of the field. They want a directional kick. They want you to start inside the 20 and not at the 25. That's his scheme. The one kickoff they gave up against Iowa, Basil miskicked it to the center of the field, and they were out of the position. Jordan Cotton brought it back at the 35-yard line. But the Urban Meyer file will show you what he's done in his career. And Todd pointed this out earlier. Yeah, he's only 100 games over 500. Okay? And, you know, he's done a great job. But it's interesting that, okay, he's done a great job with other team, with previous coaches' recruits.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we saw, you know, the package you did with Braxton Miller. He didn't recruit Braxton Miller.
Right, right. So the real test comes in year 4, year 5. And he hasn't really stayed at many of the places that long to really kind of gauge that, you know, when he shops for the groceries and gets the recruits and what happens after that. You can only gauge it after that. But, of course, you never can tell when you have a completely different coach when you're going after these guys. But to go on your point about special teams, one unit he didn't have to worry about last week was punting. They didn't punt the ball at all. But their kicker, Drew Basil, is perfect. 35 of 35 PATs, 7 of 7 field goals. Yeah. So he's doing something right with these special teams.
Yeah, he certainly is, no question about that. It also helps when Braxton Miller is your inherited quarterback, and he inherited quite a talent that Bill O'Brien knows is very special.
Yeah, it's a very difficult challenge playing a guy like Braxton Miller. You know, in my opinion, one of the top 5 players in the country. You know, really good football player who has improved immensely since he's been in the system. And he's throwing the ball well. I thought they played real well offensively against Iowa. And again, like you said, if he gets outside the pocket, you know, he's a dangerous guy.
And there's no question about that. Good receivers in Philly Brown, Devin Smith, Evan Spencer. Mix in the athleticism of Dontre Wilson and a very good tight end, Jeff Hireman. Nice mix with a veteran offensive line. But the hammer that's made a difference since he came back is Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Really remarkable consistency on all levels for their skills players. But this is the guy that they go to in the second half. So if we got a close game and we talk about Penn State's depth issues, it could be a problem. They're going to be feeding number 34. It happened against Northwestern. It happened against Iowa. So look for them to want to continue that trend against Penn State in the second half. But the remarkable consistency with Hyde and Jordan Hall getting in there, he's done a great job too. Both guys average 6.2 yards per carry.
Now, Penn State fans appreciate great linebacking play over the decades. Ryan Shazier of Ohio State fits into great linebacking play, as Bill O'Brien tells you.
You know, he's a very athletic guy, very instinctive guy, you know, a guy that can slip blocks very easily. You better know where he is in the passing game, whether he's blitzing or in coverage. Just a really athletic, good, instinctive football player.
Certainly is. Curtis Grant does a great job for them in the middle. Then you go up the guys up front. A lot of fans, of course, know about Noah Spence. Watch for a guy, Joey Bosa, a true freshman who's really come on. He's supplanted Adolphus Washington. Good player. But then there's Bradley Roby in the secondary. We know about the targeting deal last week with Iowa. But you know what, Todd? This is a good, solid football player. Maybe not playing at the level he played at last year, but still very good.
Yeah, and Coach Meyer mentioned that he is not playing at the same level as last year, but he expects him to get better as the year goes on. You know, Roby is one of those difference makers. And have we seen some difference makers in the secondary in this rivalry matchup? Go ahead, throw the statistic at us. It's not a pretty one as far as Penn State goes.
11 games, 8 interceptions returned for touchdowns in the 11 games. 6 of the games they've had twice. It's happened twice in a game, two different times. John Urschel knows there's a big challenge.
Ohio State is a very, very good team. They're very talented. You don't win that many games in a row without having a great football team, a great coaching staff. And if we want to play the type of game we know we're capable of, we just have to all perform our best.
And again, 6 of those 11 games, interceptions back for touchdowns, but 2 of them, they were 2. So it's 8 interception touchdowns in 11 games, and Shazier did it last year. That was the turning point of the game early in the third quarter last year.
Yeah, they have to take care of it, and Urschel said it all right there. They just have to play their best. It's really the ultimate challenge for them. Can we step up and compete against one of the top 5 teams in the nation?
And that's why Todd and I love sports so much, okay? Because you got this big challenge. It's going to be fun to watch it. Yeah. Jim Lachey does a great job as the analyst on the Ohio State Radio Network. I'll talk to Jimmy as we continue on Blue White Tailgate after this. Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee. Paul Keels and I have a great advantage. I got Jack Ham and he has Jim Lachey, and Jim Lachey joins us now from Columbus. Jim, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be back. And, you know, this is a nice little rivalry that Ohio State and Penn State have developed over the years. And but it's always good to see you guys, especially coming to our place this Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it very much. I want to start, obviously a lot of people will start with Braxton Miller for obvious reasons, but we know what he does with the X plays, Jim. What have they done and how hard has he worked to become a far more accurate quarterback, and what's that accuracy meant to the pass game?
You know, it's amazing. His goal was to raise his accuracy by about 10%, and that's what he's done so far this year. You know, I think it's just a general, you know, working on his technique. His technique was a little bit sloppy, you know, how he was setting up his feet and his follow-through and, you know, just kind of using the basic techniques. And, you know, having a full off season under Coach Tom Herman, I think he really developed that, worked hard on it, just working on his timing. And he spent some time on his own, going to different camps around the country and just trying to develop into being the best quarterback he can be throwing the football. And certainly that was exhibited early in the season, and then he got injured and was out for a couple games. And then we saw the improvement of what Kenny Guyton was able to do for the passing game. But I think last game, you know, here at home in Iowa, we saw Braxton back 100% healthy. Obviously, he had another 300-yard total offense game. That's 7 now for his career, and that puts him, you know, number 1 all time. And obviously, you think of a lot of the great offensive players that came through Ohio State, and for Braxton to be up there number one, that's saying a lot. I know it's a different era. Football is a different game now with 85, 90 plays a game offensively, but to see what he's done, back to being healthy, he's really coming off one of his best games.
You're right. It's a different time and a different era, but the running game is still so important regardless of era. Getting Carlos Hyde back, what has that meant to the offensive line and the downhill running game of Ohio State?
Well, Carlos is just a man. He proved that Northwestern a couple weeks ago in the second half where, they just kind of set their tone and says, we're going to hand it off to number 34 and make you stop him. Obviously, the offensive line has 4 seniors, center Corey Lindsley, Marcus Hall, Andrew Norwell guards, and then Jack Muhort at left tackle. He's playing at a high quality, high level right now. Obviously, he's in the mix for an all Big Ten, maybe some All-American type teams if the team keeps having success. And then the freshman Taylor Decker has really come on over at right tackle. When you got those guys up front and getting push, getting the linebackers, getting to that second level, it gives, Carlos a few running lanes. And then we proved last week that Carlos is not easy to come down. He got whacked pretty hard about the 7-yard line, backed him up to about the 10-yard line. He regained his balance and got a great block by Philly Brown, the wide receivers. And obviously that's important, too, in the running game is having receivers willing to block downfield. And they bought into that, and he had a nice 19-yard touchdown run that really took about 25, 30 yards to get it done. But he's a fantastic back. Losing him early, obviously that hurt Ohio State a little bit, just not having that big power back. But Jordan Hall filled in great, and Jordan Hall's close to being healthy. And, of course, Pennsylvania people remember him. He's, right there from Jeanette, Pennsylvania.
The Ohio State defense is usually run on the field with a lot of green behind it. There have been only 3 possessions the entire season that have started on the plus side of the field by the opponent. But how good has that front 7 been, Jim, especially against the run?
They've been fantastic. They kind of said, that's something that they had to do this year is be good against the run. They're giving up 92 yards a game. Obviously the first half they weren't very good last week against Iowa. Iowa was pushing those guys around a little bit, and they're probably not coming off their best game. They've played better in the past, so they're going to have to get back to what they've been doing. But Joel Hale and Michael Bennett up front has been nice. Noah Spence, he's done some nice things. Sometimes he can be overpowered a little bit because he's only about 250 pounds, but he's a guy that obviously can rush a passer and get after it, and he's a unique football player. And then Joey Boza, a freshman out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, has really come on for Ohio State and has really unseated Adolphus Washington, who's had some injuries. So that defensive line has really played well. Not coming off their best game, but I know Mike Vrabel, their defensive line coach, will have those guys fired up and ready to go for the home game at 8 o'clock. But no, that's the key to stopping. You got some guys up front that can make plays that allows Ryan Shazier and Curtis Grant to step in and make some tackles.
How concerned is Urban about the pass defense?
He's concerned. That's been where every team's attacked us, and it's been different ways. Northwestern game, they brought 2 quarterbacks in, and Kane Coulter. Ecke was 12 of 12 throwing the football against us. Seaman was pretty good, and then Coulter even caught a touchdown pass. So that was a little bit confusing. And then, after the bye week, working on that pass defense a lot, Iowa comes out with a 3 tight end set and kind of befuddles Ohio State in the first half. They had the ball for 18 minutes and some change compared to Ohio State, having it for 11 minutes. And then the second half, they got some 3 and outs. They got some stops defensively, made some adjustments to what they needed to do, and then the offense played ball hog. Had the ball for about 23 minutes in the second half. So if your defense is struggling, you want to count on an offense to play keep away, and Ohio State's offense was able to do that. But it's been a complimentary team. The defense has stepped up and made some plays and some interceptions. Special teams obviously have done their job, regarding field position, and the offense has had some big plays and is able to go fast if they need to and then slow it down if that's the case.
Jim, just got about 10 seconds here. For Ohio State, 4th in the BCS, they don't have a lot of, quote, impact games remaining. How important is this one?
I think they're all important. The target gets bigger for Ohio State as they keep winning. So we know that every team, this is their highlight film if they can beat Ohio State and end their winning streak, which is at 19 games right now. So the pressure's on. You just got to survive and advance at this case.
Jim, thanks so much. Appreciate the time. As always, look forward to seeing you Saturday.
All right. Sounds great, Steve. Thanks so much.
All right, Jim Lachey, the outstanding analyst for Ohio State football, working with Paul Keels. We'll come back. Wrap it up in a moment on the Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee. All right, we hit what we call the G block. Notice the smiles. That means we're almost to the finish line of this one, but it's just the beginning for the BCS standings. The final ever set of BCS standings came out this week, and you see Ohio State, Alabama, still have LSU, they still have the SEC championship game, Auburn, Florida State still has Florida along the way, Oregon has Stanford. Ohio State, has Penn State, Michigan. Yeah. They don't really have a lot of impact games left, Todd.
No, they don't. They're sitting in 4. If they take care of their business, they just got to hope those dominoes fall in the right direction. That Oregon, Florida State, somebody trips up along the way, maybe Alabama, and they can just slowly keep going up the notches and get themselves a title shot if they take care of their own schedule.
And here's the thing. Maybe Stanford beats Oregon. Maybe along the way Florida State loses. We'll find out. Let's take a look at the top 25 games for this week. Are there any trip-up possibilities? Nope, not really. UCLA is at Oregon. Should be a good one. Stanford's at Oregon State. Texas Tech at Oklahoma. They are buzzing about that in Norman. Just kidding. All right, now let's get to the Big Ten week. And in the Big Ten week, it looks like this. Nebraska's at Minnesota. Minnesota coming off a win last week, Todd. Played very well in that one in beating Northwestern. Michigan State, they're the leader in the Legends right now, playing at Illinois. That's Penn State's next opponent. Northwestern is desperate for a win. They play at Iowa.
Yeah, 0-3 in the Big Ten to start the conference. They were ranked, and then they've fallen away from that. And Big Ten's populating the end of the top 25. They're starting to get into the 22s, the 24s, the 25s. So we'll see if any team can put together some sort of consistent win streak to start moving up in the rankings.
Right, let's talk about keys to the game. We'll start with me. And when we look at the keys to this, I think field position becomes important. Can Penn State shorten the field against a team like Ohio State, which specializes in giving you a long field, which then goes to giveaway, takeaway? You have to force Braxton Miller into some mistakes, and Christian Hackenberg has to stay away from the big mistake. We already outlined the interceptions for touchdowns against Penn State in this series. Todd?
I'm going to piggyback on the field position in this way. The fact that they've got to make Ohio State go the long field and then the drive stalls, and they maybe kick a field goal instead of scoring touchdowns. Penn State, Sam Ficken has 23 PATs. He's 11 of 15 for field goals. Notice the ratio there. Their kicker has 35 PATs and only 7 field goal attempts. So they've got to keep Ohio State out of the end zone, make them kick 3 points, and then reverse that trend the other way. Try and get a turnover or 2, but they have got to score touchdowns.
And they also need a good start. Ohio State scored in their opening drive in 5 of the 7 games this year, so keep that in mind as well. For Todd Sadowski, I'm Steve Jones. Enjoy the game. 8 o'clock. Our thanks, by the way, to our good friends at Aaron's. Thanks for joining us at Blue White Tailgate.
Wow.